He had lost everything he loved and decided to disguise himself as a common man to find out if true love still existed in the world. But what he found was a woman treated like trash by her own family. And this discovery would change both their lives forever. Have you ever imagined pretending to be poor to test people's hearts? Well, that was exactly what happened in the heart of Anambra State, where a man destroyed by pain decided to abandon his title, put on the simple clothes of a farm laborer, and discover if someone could love him for the man he was and not for the fortune he possessed. On that sunny March morning, no one imagined that a widowed chief and a young woman rejected by everyone were about to meet, and that this meeting would not only transform their destinies, but also reveal the cruelty hidden behind the doors of a seemingly respectable family. While society judged by money and social position, he was trying to understand if genuine love still existed in a world driven by self-interest. And she was simply trying to survive, being invisible in her own home, mistreated by those who should have protected her. But what neither of them knew was that their chance meeting at the gate of a farm would be just the beginning of a story involving disguises, shocking revelations, and a dramatic rescue that no one expected. The March sun shone brightly over the town of Nemo, illuminating the green hills surrounding the Okafor family compound. The afternoon silence was broken only by the singing of birds and the distant sound of someone working in the fields. But that apparent peace hid secrets, deep hurts, and a meeting that was about to happen and change lives forever. You've planted everything wrong, Adana. Everything wrong. Chinwe Okafor's shriek cut through the garden like a sharp knife. On the other side of the stone wall, covered in climbers, a man stopped immediately upon hearing that furious voice. He wore simple, worn-out clothes, a beige cotton shirt stained with dust, patched trousers, and old boots covered in dry mud. He had arrived there a few minutes earlier via the dirt path and was about to call at the gate when the shouting made him hesitate. He leaned against the wall, hidden in the shadows of the trees, and watched through a gap between the stones. A woman in a green floral wrapper was pointing furiously at a young woman kneeling on the ground. I said to plant on the right side, not the left. Chinwe shouted angrily, pointing at the newly planted hibiscus cuttings. Chief Emeka is coming this afternoon. Everything must be perfect to impress him for your sisters, Nkechi and Chiamaka. The young woman in a faded gray dress, her hands dirty with soil and her face lowered in submission, mumbled something inaudible. Don't you think, Adana? Replant everything now and then go to the kitchen to help the maids. The man behind the wall frowned. The woman treated the young lady as if she were a mere househelp, shouting without any pity. What a wicked madam, he thought with growing indignation. But then came the word that made him freeze completely. Your sisters have been getting ready for hours. Chinwe continued to scream. Wear something decent later, not these servants' clothes. If the chief arrives and sees you like this, it will be a disgrace to this family. Sisters. The man clenched his fists tightly. His dark brown eyes widened with the impact. That mistreated young woman was not a house help. She was a daughter of the house. And that cruel woman was her mother, a mother treating her own daughter like a servant, humiliating her publicly without any compassion. His heart ached with indignation and compassion for the young woman in the gray dress, who remained kneeling, accepting everything in silence. The man moved away from the wall silently and walked towards the main gate of the property. He adjusted the cloth sack on his back, ran a hand through his disheveled hair, and took a deep breath. He knocked firmly on the wooden gate and called out in a deep, respectful voice. Is anybody home? I'm looking for the owners of the house. Chinwe turned abruptly at the sound of the voice, her brow furrowing with irritation. Adana also lifted her head, surprised by the interruption. Chinwe walked to the gate with firm steps, her chin held high, and Adana followed timidly a few meters behind. Who are you and what do you want here? Chinwe demanded coldly, looking the tattered stranger up and down with critical eyes. The man bowed respectfully and kept his eyes lowered in a sign of submission. Good afternoon, Ma. My name is Chinedu, he said, with studied humility. I have come from far away, looking for honest work. I heard in the village that the Okafor compound is a respectable place, and I came to offer my services. Chinwe crossed her arms over her chest, her face hardening even more. We don't have money to hire laborers, she answered curtly, ready to dismiss him. We can barely pay the few staff we still have here. The man quickly took a step forward, maintaining his humble but urgent tone. I am not asking for money, Ma. I will work only in exchange for a roof over my head and food. Chinwe hesitated, biting her lip as she assessed the man's broad shoulders and strong arms under his worn shirt. Before she could answer, Adana spoke softly beside her. Mama, Papa has been complaining for weeks that he urgently needs someone to look after the horses. Her voice was gentle and practical. The mare's hooves need to be trimmed before the chief's visit this afternoon. Chinwei glanced at her daughter, and then at the stranger, calculating quickly. If it didn't cost money and they needed urgent help with the animals, perhaps it was worth it. Finally, she sighed impatiently. Very well. You will have to speak with my husband Uche first. He decides these things. She turned to Adana with a severe look. Take him to the study to speak with your father right now. Adana opened the gate and gestured for him to enter. Come, Mr. Chinedu, she said in a low voice. They walked in silence through the garden and then down a corridor to a dark wooden door. Adana knocked gently. Papa, is someone there? Uche's dry, impatient voice answered from within. Enter. She opened the door, revealing a thin man of about 60, sitting behind a desk covered in papers. Uche looked up briefly, not hiding his irritation at the interruption. What is it? He asked sharply, without greetings or pleasantries. Adana kept her voice soft. This is Chinedu, Papa. He is looking for work in exchange for shelter and food. Mama said you should talk to him, as we need someone to take care of the horses. Uche sized up the man for only a few seconds with a cold, calculating gaze. Do you know how to care for horses? He asked directly, without beating around the bush. If you do, the job is yours. Yes, sir, the man replied. Uche nodded distractedly, already turning his attention back to the papers in front of him. Adana, bring me tea now, he ordered, without looking at his daughter. Then show him the outbuilding at the back and explain the work. He glanced briefly at the stranger, with a harsh expression. There is no money for pay, only shelter and food. If that suits you, start today. And with a brusque wave of his hand, he dismissed them without another word, returning to his review of the accounts, as if they were no longer there. Adana led the man out of the study in silence. She first went to the kitchen to get the tea her father had demanded, and quickly returned with a tray. She entered the study alone to serve it while he waited in the corridor. Moments later, she came out, closing the door carefully, and gestured for him to follow her. They walked through the back of the property, past fragrant orange trees, until they reached the faded red wooden stables. The outbuilding is back there, she indicated, pointing. There is clean hay inside and a water pump on the side. The horses are here in the stables. She hesitated for a moment, biting her lip. Welcome, Mr. Chinedu. Adana quickly returned to the main house. The man stood still, watching her walk away. Then he walked to the outbuilding and entered. It was spacious, with piles of golden hay in the corners and dark wooden beams in the ceiling. There was a small window that overlooked the back of the main house. He placed his sack in a corner, sat on the hay, and finally allowed his shoulders to relax. He closed his eyes for a long moment, thinking about everything he had just witnessed. The cruelty of that mother, the coldness of that father, the quiet kindness of the young Adana. Then, he took a deep breath because it was time to remember who he really was. His name was not Chinedu. It was Chief Emeka Ofordili, the Igwe of Amankwe, lord of vast lands and one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in that entire region of Anambra. Emeka was 35, and he was tired, deeply tired. A widower for 3 years, he had lost his beloved wife, Adaora, in a difficult childbirth that also took the baby. Since then, he had been immersed in a silent pain that all the money in the world could not heal. His family had been pressuring him for over a year to remarry. They said he needed a wife, children, to continue the lineage. But every formal visit to the prominent families in the area was the same empty charade. Women made up like dolls, flattering parents, conversations about property and lineage. None saw the real man behind the chief's title. That was when Emeka had a bold idea. To visit these families disguised as a poor laborer before the official visits, to see their true faces, to observe who they really were when they weren't pretending to impress a wealthy noble. His younger brother, Ikenna, thought he was crazy, but ended up agreeing. He too was tired of shallow and greedy socialites. Emeka had scheduled official visits as a chief to several properties in the following weeks, and the Okafor farm was the first on the list. But before the formal visit, he would arrive days earlier, disguised as Chinedu, to observe who the Okafors really were when they weren't putting on a show. That afternoon, the family would receive a message. Chief Emeka Ofordili was unwell with a high fever and could not make the scheduled visit. He wanted to observe the Okafors without their masks, and what he had seen so far already revealed a great deal: cruelty, falsehood, and a kind young woman mistreated by her own family. Emeka left the outbuilding and went straight to the adjoining stables, where he began to care for the neglected horses. There were 7 in total. 4 mares, 2 stallions, and a young foal. They were all too thin, with their ribs visible under their dull coats, and their hooves were cracked from lack of care. But they were good quality animals, beautiful beneath the layer of dirt and neglect. Emeka had 20 horses on his own property. He called each of them by name as if they were family. Seeing these 7 noble animals treated with such negligence infuriated him. What a waste, he muttered as he carefully combed the tangled mane of a grey mare that looked at him with sad, suspicious eyes. You all deserve so much better than this. He worked with care and affection, cleaning, feeding, and speaking softly to each animal, as he always did. Night had completely fallen, and the full moon illuminated the outbuilding through the small window when Emeka finally heard soft footsteps approaching. The wooden door opened slowly, and Adana entered, carrying a tray covered with a clean cloth. She wore the same worn grey dress, but now her brown hair was loose, falling in natural waves over her shoulders and back down to her waist. The soft light of the kerosene lamp she carried illuminated her delicate face, and for the first time, Emeka truly noticed her hidden beauty. It wasn't the flashy, artificial beauty of the women he knew in high society, but something deeper and more genuine. Her light brown eyes shone with kindness, and there was a natural grace in her movements, even dressed in rags. Emeka felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt since Adaora had died. Adana placed the tray on a wooden crate and removed the cloth, revealing not a dry piece of bread, but a generous, abundant plate. Roasted chicken, still steaming, golden fried plantains, stewed vegetables, a large piece of fresh bread, and even a mug of clean water. The aroma was wonderful. Emeka looked at the plate, and then at her, surprised. Miss Adana, he began. She sat on a pile of hay nearby, adjusting her worn skirt around her legs. I will wait for you to finish eating to take the plate back, mister. Chinedu, she said softly. I don't want my mother to see that I brought more than she ordered. Emeka hesitated, then took the plate and sat down as well. I accidentally overheard the conversation in the living room earlier, he admitted in a low voice. Your mother asked you to bring only dry bread. Adana managed a small, sad smile, but her eyes remained kind. Don't worry, mister. Chinedu, I will always bring you proper food while you are working here. It is only fair. She looked at her own calloused hands, resting in her lap. Please, excuse the things my parents say. They are under a lot of pressure because of debts and financial problems. It's no excuse for cruelty, I know, but it is their reality. There was a surprising maturity in her voice, a deep understanding of human nature that didn't match her apparent youth. Emeka watched her as he ate slowly, studying every detail of her face in the soft lamplight. And in that moment, there, in the humble outbuilding surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, he began to think something he hadn't dared to think for years. Maybe, just maybe, this young woman was different from all the others. That night, Uche was in the study with Chinwe. She still wore the green floral wrapper from the day, but now her slumped shoulders betrayed her accumulated exhaustion and frustration. We need to talk, Uche, she said in a tense voice, sitting in the chair in front of the desk. The chief cancelled. We don't know when he will come, and Chief Okoro is demanding payment by next week. Uche ran his hands over his tired face, his eyes red from calculating impossible figures on the papers scattered before him. I have no more money, Chinwe, he murmured, his voice broken with desperation. Chief Okoro is not a man who waits. He has already sent 3 warnings. If we don't pay next week, he will take whatever he wants, and there will be serious consequences. Chinwe pressed her lips into a thin line, her face hardening. That coarse, fat, drunken old man, she spat venomously. Why did you borrow money from him, Uche? Of all the money lenders in the region, it had to be Chief Okoro. You know very well he shows no mercy when someone owes him. He is relentless. Uche slammed his fist on the table, making the lamp flicker. I had no choice. No bank would lend us any more. He was the only one who agreed, and now we are trapped. A heavy silence filled the study for long moments, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock in the corner. Uche stared at the impossible bills, his forehead furrowed in painful concentration. Then, he slowly raised his eyes to his wife with an expression that mixed desperation and cold calculation. I was thinking, you know, he began hesitantly, his voice low, of offering one of the girls. Chinwe's eyes widened, immediately understanding what he was suggesting. To Chief Okoro? She asked incredulously, her voice rising an octave. Have you gone mad, Uche? I will not marry my daughters to that disgusting man. He drinks like a fish and treats women like property. They deserve young, rich nobles, not that filthy pig. Uche leaned forward, his hard eyes shining with desperate determination. What about Adana? The question fell like a stone into the silence of the study. Chinwe froze, her mouth slightly open. Adana, she repeated slowly, the name sounding strange on her lips. Uche nodded, gesturing with his hands. Think about it, Chinwe. Adana wouldn't have an opinion. She never has an opinion on anything. We decide, and she obeys as she always has. The debt is too high, and Chief Okoro would certainly accept the hand of an Okafor girl in marriage as payment. He has always looked at our daughters with interest. His voice was filled with disgust, but also a brutal pragmatism. Chinwe remained silent, processing the horrible proposal. Then, slowly, a cruel smile began to form on her painted lips. It's true, she murmured thoughtfully, the smile growing. It could be a good idea. In fact, Adana is young, healthy, and would adequately fulfill the role of a wife. Chief Okoro would be satisfied, and our debt would be forgiven. She looked at her husband, her eyes shining with a cold, calculated relief. And so Nkechi and Chiamaka would be free to marry the chief or other suitable nobles when the opportunity arises. Uche nodded vigorously, clearly relieved that she agreed. Exactly what I was thinking. It's the perfect solution. Chinwe raised a hesitant hand. But let's wait for now. We don't need to make this decision today. We still have a few days. If the chief confirms a new visit before the deadline, maybe we can find another solution. She left the sentence hanging menacingly in the air. Uche nodded gravely, understanding perfectly. If he doesn't confirm, we will offer Adana to Chief Okoro. The next day dawned clear and hot, with the rising sun painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Emeka woke up early in the outbuilding, to the sound of birds singing and the soft neighing of the horses in the stables. He stretched on the hay, feeling his muscles slightly sore from the previous day's work, but it was a good, satisfying ache. As he sat up, he noticed something that hadn't been there the night before. A small makeshift table made of wooden crates, and on it, carefully covered with a clean cloth, was a steaming mug with hot tea and a generous piece of fresh bread with some butter. His heart warmed instantly. Adana must have come before dawn, while he was sleeping, to leave that simple but thoughtful breakfast. Emeka got up, washed his face with the cold water from the external pump, and drank the tea with genuine gratitude. The taste was simple but honest, and it meant more to him than any elaborate banquet in his grand residence. After eating, he began to work with renewed energy. He spent the entire morning reorganizing the outbuilding, cleaned every corner, swept the dirt floor, fixed a loose beam in the ceiling, and organized the rusty tools that were scattered in a corner. Then he went to the stables and worked on the stalls, removing all the dirty straw and replacing it with fresh hay, fixing the creaky wooden doors, and checking every detail with the meticulous care of someone who truly cares. Around midday, he took the 7 horses to the green pasture at the back of the property, watching with satisfaction as they ran free for the first time in a long time. Throughout this intense work, Emeka discreetly observed the main house from a distance, and what he saw impressed and infuriated him more and more. Adana did not stop for a single minute the entire morning. He saw her come out of the kitchen door, carrying heavy buckets of water, then sweep the entire front veranda, and then shake out huge rugs that raised clouds of dust in the hot air. She ran from one place to another, attending to invisible calls, always in that worn gray dress, always with the slightly stooped posture of someone carrying too much weight on young shoulders. Meanwhile, her sisters Nkechi and Chiamaka appeared on the veranda only once, laughing loudly, dressed in light, colorful clothes, fanning themselves lazily before returning to the cool interior of the house. The difference in treatment was shocking and revolting. That afternoon, as the sun began to set on the horizon, dyeing everything in orange and gold, Emeka was giving water to the horses when he saw Adana coming down the steep path that led to the stream at the bottom of the property. She was carrying a huge wicker basket overflowing with dirty laundry sheets, dresses, shirts, towels that must have weighed almost as much as she did. The basket was so heavy that she had to stop every few steps to rest her trembling arms. Emeka watched her disappear among the trees that lined the stream, and something inside him, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and a growing interest he couldn't deny, compelled him to follow her discreetly. He left the horses grazing peacefully and walked silently down the same path, keeping a safe distance so as not to be noticed. The stream was a beautiful, secluded place, surrounded by weeping willows whose branches hung like green curtains over the crystal-clear water that flowed gently over smooth stones. Emeka stopped behind a wide log, hidden in the shadows, and watched. Adana had left the heavy basket on the bank and was now looking around carefully, checking if she was truly alone. Apparently satisfied with her privacy, she began to undress slowly, removing the worn gray dress. Out of respect, Emeka turned and sat behind a tree. He knew he should leave, that he was intruding on a private moment, but his feet seemed glued to the ground. He decided to wait until she left. He kept his eyes respectfully averted, looking at the trees, the sky, anywhere but directly in her direction. But he was aware of every sound, the gentle splashing of the water, her sigh of relief as she washed away the sweat and dirt of the day, the low hum of a song she sang softly to herself as she bathed. There was something deeply moving in that simple scene. A young woman stealing a few minutes of peace and cleanliness in the middle of an exhausting day of endless work. After a few minutes that felt like hours, Emeka heard the sounds of her getting out of the water, the rustle of clothes as she dressed again, and he waited patiently, giving her time to compose herself completely. When he judged that enough time had passed, Emeka took a deep breath and deliberately walked down the path, making noise with his heavy steps on the dry leaves to announce his arrival. As he came around the bend between the trees, Adana was already fully dressed again in the gray dress, her wet hair tied in a loose braid, and she was kneeling on the bank of the stream, vigorously scrubbing a white sheet against a smooth, soap-covered stone. She lifted her head in surprise at the sound of his footsteps, and her eyes widened when she saw him. "Mr. Chinedu," she exclaimed, bringing a wet hand to her chest. "I didn't hear you coming. Do you need something?" Emeka approached slowly, maintaining a respectful and humble posture. "Forgive me for startling you, Miss Adana. I saw you come down with that heavy basket and thought I'd offer to help carry it back up." Adana looked at the huge basket, still full of wet laundry waiting to be hung, and smiled with genuine weariness. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Chinedu, but you don't need to worry. I'm used to it." Emeka shook his head firmly. "I insist, miss. I've finished my work with the horses, and I have free time. Let me at least carry the basket back to the house when you're done." She hesitated, biting her lower lip uncertainly, but then she nodded gently. "All right. Thank you, Mr. Chinedu." She went back to scrubbing the sheet against the stone with rhythmic, experienced movements. Emeka sat on a nearby rock, watching her work. The silence was comfortable, broken only by the sound of the running water and the fabric being washed. After a few minutes, he spoke casually. "How long have you lived here, Miss Adana?" She didn't look up from the laundry. "I was born here. This has always been my home." Her voice was soft, without resentment, simply stating a fact. "And your sisters? Are they older or younger than you?" "Nkechi is 22. Kiamaka is 20. I am the youngest. I am 19. She wrung out the sheet forcefully, water dripping between her fingers. "They are very beautiful and talented. My mother has high hopes that they will make good marriages." Emeka noticed that she didn't include herself in that hope. "And you? Don't you think about marriage?" Adana finally stopped washing and looked at him with those light brown eyes that seemed to hold more wisdom than her age suggested. A small, sad smile curved her lips. "I am not the kind of woman men look for to marry, Mr. Chinedu," she said without self-pity. "Just as someone might state that the sky is blue or that water is wet, I have no dowry. I am not beautiful like my sisters, and I don't have the social skills needed to impress suitors. I have learned to accept my place." Emeka felt something tighten in his chest. How could this kind and beautiful young woman, because she was beautiful, though she clearly didn't know it, have so little regard for herself? "I respectfully disagree, miss. I think any man with eyes to see would recognize your worth." Adana looked at him, surprised, her cheeks blushing slightly. "You are very kind, but you don't need to lie to make me feel better." She returned to her work, but Emeka noticed that her movements were less certain, as if his words had shaken her in some way. They worked in a companionable silence until all the clothes were washed. Adana hung the wet pieces on the low branches of the willows to dry a little before taking them back. Then, Emeka picked up the basket, now even heavier with the soaked laundry, and lifted it easily onto his shoulder. Adana watched him do it with no apparent effort, impressed by his strength. "You are very strong, Mr. Chinedu." He smiled modestly. "I've worked with my hands my whole life. It makes a man strong." They started up the steep path back to the house. Emeka adjusted the basket on his shoulder and offered his free arm to Adana. "Hold on to me, miss. The path is slippery." She hesitated for only a moment before accepting, placing her small, calloused hand on his arm. Emeka felt a warmth spread through his chest at the simple touch. They climbed slowly, him being careful not to go too fast and tire her. "Can I ask a personal question, Miss Adana?" he ventured when they were halfway up. She looked at him curiously. "You can, Mr. Chinedu. Why do your parents treat you differently from your sisters?" The question came out more directly than he had intended, and he immediately regretted it when he saw her face close up. Adana looked away, focusing on the path ahead. She was silent for so long that Emeka thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, when they were almost at the top of the path, she spoke in a voice so low he had to lean in to hear. "Because I am not my father's daughter." The words fell like stones in the afternoon silence. Emeka stopped walking, turning to face her completely. Adana kept her eyes down, her cheeks flushed with shame. "My mother had a relationship before she married my father. She became pregnant. My real father was a poor man who worked on the family's land. When they found out, he left and never came back." Her voice was devoid of emotion, as if she were telling someone else's story. "Uche Okafor still married my mother, even knowing she was carrying another man's child. He was generous in that sense, but he has never forgiven me for existing. He has never seen me as a real daughter." She finally looked up to face him, and Emeka saw an old, deep pain there. "My sisters are his blood daughters. I am just the bastard he had to accept as part of the marriage agreement. That's why they treat me the way they do. And I understand, Mr. Chinedu. I really do. I can't blame them for something that wasn't my fault, but wasn't their fault either." Emeka stood in silence, processing the revelation. So many things made sense now. The cruelty, the disdain, the treatment as a servant. And yet, Adana held no grudge. She had a heart so pure that she could understand and forgive those who mistreated her daily. "Miss Adana," he said in a grave, sincere voice, "nothing you have just told me diminishes your worth. If anything, it only shows how strong and good you are to carry this burden with such grace and dignity." Tears welled in Adana's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "Thank you, Mr. Chinedu. You have a kind heart." She gently squeezed his arm before letting go. "But we should go back before my mother notices I'm taking too long." They finished climbing the path in silence. When they reached the backyard, Adana pointed to a wooden clothesline near the kitchen. "You can leave the basket there, please. I'll hang the rest now." Emeka carefully placed the basket on the ground and turned to leave, but she called him softly. "Mr. Chinedu." He turned. "Thank you, not just for carrying the basket, but for listening. Thanks for watching. Information is notified, and then opportunity, and it may, and for not judging me." He nodded respectfully. "It was a privilege, Miss Adana." And with that, he returned to the outbuilding, but his mind remained with her, processing everything he had discovered. That night, after it was completely dark and the stars dotted the sky like diamonds on black velvet, Adana appeared at the outbuilding again with dinner. This time, she brought not only food, but also a thick blanket folded over her arm. "The nights are getting cold," she explained shyly, holding out the blanket to him. "I thought you might need this." Emeka accepted the blanket with gratitude, touched by her constant kindness. "You are very thoughtful. Thank you." They sat as they had the night before, she on the hay and he with the plate of food. But this time, there was a different intimacy in the air, a connection that had formed during their conversation by the stream. Emeka ate in silence for a few minutes before speaking. "Miss Adana, may I ask something I've been wondering?" She nodded, curious. "Why are you so kind to me? I am just a temporary worker, someone your parents barely notice. You don't have to treat me with such consideration." Adana tilted her head, thinking carefully before answering. "My grandmother, Uche's mother, used to tell me something when I was little, and she was still alive. She said we should treat everyone with kindness, because we never know the battles each person is facing." Her eyes shone softly in the lamplight. "She was the only person in this house who treated me with true love. When she died, I promised myself I would be like her, kind to everyone, especially to those life has already hurt too much." She smiled, gently. "I see in your eyes, Mr. Chinedu, that you have suffered. I don't know what or why, but I recognize that hidden pain because I carry it too. So, yes, I will be kind to you, because everyone deserves kindness, especially those who have forgotten how to receive it." Emeka was speechless. In that moment, in that humble outbuilding, lit only by a faint lamp, sitting on hay and eating simple food, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 long years: hope. While Emeka and Adana shared that moment of genuine connection in the back outbuilding, a very different conversation was taking place inside the main house. Uche was in the study again, this time accompanied by a fat, poorly dressed man who smelled strongly of palm wine. Chief Okoro must have been about 60, with a prominent belly straining the buttons of his sweat-stained yellow shirt. He had small, cruel eyes that assessed everything around him with the greed of someone who saw the world only as things to be possessed or exploited. "So, Uche," Okoro said in a thick voice, taking another gulp of the palm wine he had brought in a rusty keg. "The deadline is approaching. Did you bring my money, or are we going to have to make another arrangement?" Uche shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I'm working on it, Chief. I just need a few more days. Chief Emeka is supposed to visit." Okoro slammed his fat fist on the table, making the papers jump. "I am tired of waiting. I've given you too much time. Either you pay me by the end of the week, or I will take what is mine by right. This property, your furniture, everything." Uche turned pale. "You can't do that. This land has been in the family for generations. I can and I will," Okoro growled, leaning forward with a cruel smile. Unless we can come to another agreement." Uche swallowed hard, already knowing where this was going. "What kind of agreement?" Okoro leaned back in his chair, which groaned under his weight, and his smile widened, showing yellowed, stained teeth. "I heard you have 3 beautiful daughters in this house. I am getting old, Uche, tired of living alone. A young, beautiful wife to take care of me in my old age, give me sons, serve me. That would be worth forgiving your debt completely." Uche closed his eyes. It was exactly what he and Chinwe had discussed, but hearing it proposed aloud so crudely and mercenarily made his stomach churn. "Chief, my daughters. I heard the youngest one is pretty," Okoro continued, ignoring Uche's hesitation. "What's her name?" "Adanna." "Yes, Adanna. I've seen her a few times in the village. Quiet, obedient. She would be perfect." He stood, swaying slightly from the drink, and walked to the window, looking out at the dark yard. "Bring her here. I want to see her before I confirm the deal." Uche was paralyzed. It was one thing to discuss this with Chinwe in theory, but quite another to confront the raw reality. He was about to sell his stepdaughter to a repulsive man to save his property. "She is working," he mumbled weakly. "She cannot be disturbed now." Okoro turned sharply, his small eyes flashing with anger. "I am not asking, Uche. Send for her now, or consider our negotiation over and prepare to lose everything." The study door opened, and Chinwe entered, having obviously heard the shouting from the corridor. She assessed the situation quickly with her calculating eyes. "Chief Okoro," she said with a falsely sweet voice. "What a joy to receive you in our humble home." Okoro looked at her with disguised contempt. "I am not here for pleasantries, Chinwe. I came for my money, or a wife. Your husband seems to be having trouble deciding." Chinwe shot a hard look at Uche before smiling at Okoro. "Adanna is busy at the moment, but I can introduce you to my other daughters. Nkechi and Chiamaka are educated, beautiful young women, from a good family. I don't want your other daughters." Okoro snarled, stamping his foot on the floor like a spoiled child. "I have already decided. I want Adanna. If you do not agree, I will take this property, and you will be on the street. I have the legal papers, I have witnesses, I have everything." Chinwe and Uche exchanged desperate glances. Finally, Chinwe sighed in defeat. "All right, I will get her." She left the study with quick, determined steps, leaving Uche alone with Okoro. The fat man sat down again, satisfied, drinking more palm wine. "Wise decision, Uche. You will see. This arrangement will benefit us all." Chinwe walked quickly through the dark house, a lamp in her hand, looking for Adanna. She checked the kitchen, the bedrooms, the pantry. Nothing. Finally, one of the housemaids whispered that she had seen the girl going towards the outbuildings with a tray of food. Chinwe pressed her lips together in anger. Of course, Adanna would be wasting time with that vagrant worker. She marched determinedly towards the back of the property, the lamp swinging in her hand, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In the outbuilding, Emeka had just finished eating, and Adanna was collecting the plate when they heard the firm footsteps approaching. They both turned to the door just as Chinwe burst in like a hurricane. Her eyes swept the scene, her daughter sitting on the hay, the worker too close, and her face twisted in rage. "Adanna, what do you think you are doing here?" Adanna quickly stood up, setting the plate aside. "I was just bringing Mr. Chinedu his dinner, Mama, as you ordered. I didn't tell you to stay here chatting." Chinwe shouted, "Come with me now. There is someone who wants to meet you." She grabbed Adanna's arm tightly, causing the girl to let out a small cry of pain. Emeka instinctively took a step forward. "Madame, please, you don't need to hurt her." Chinwe turned to him with flaming eyes. "You have no permission to speak to me, laborer. Stay in your place or you will leave this property tonight." She pulled Adanna forcefully towards the door. Adana cast an apologetic glance at Emeka over her shoulder before being dragged out of the outbuilding. Emeka stood still, his fists clenched, every muscle tense with the urge to intervene, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. If he revealed who he really was now, impulsively, he could make things worse. He forced himself to take a deep breath, to think clearly. Something was happening. Something bad. He could feel it in his bones. He waited a few minutes and then quietly slipped out of the outbuilding, moving through the shadows towards the main house. Chinwe dragged Adana down the corridor to the study. She gave no explanations, answered no questions, just pushed the door open and threw Adana inside with enough force to make her stumble. Adana regained her balance and looked up, confused and frightened. Her father was sitting behind the desk, looking 10 years older, and a fat, smelly man she had never seen before was sitting in the other chair, staring at her with eyes that made her want to take a shower. "This is Adana, Chief Okoro," Chinwe said with a falsely cheerful voice. "Our youngest daughter." Okoro stood up with difficulty and walked slowly around Adana, looking her up and down as if assessing an animal at the market. She stood frozen, not understanding what was happening, but instinctively feeling that something terrible was approaching. "Take off that horrible dress," Okoro ordered casually. "I want to see what you look like underneath those rags." Adana's eyes widened in shock and horror, and she took a step back. "I will not." "Do as he says," Chinwe shouted. "No." Adana looked at her father desperately, silently begging for help, for protection, for anything. But Uche just looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Tears began to stream down Adana's face. "Please, Mama, I don't understand what is happening." "Why?" Chinwe took a threatening step towards her. "Because you are going to marry Chief Okoro. That is what is happening. He has agreed to take you as his wife in payment for your father's debts." Adana's world seemed to collapse. Marriage to that repulsive man who was looking at her like a predator? "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, please, I can't." "You can and you will," Okoro growled, advancing on her. "It is decided. The ceremony will be next week. But first, I want to make sure you are healthy, that you are fit to bear children." He grabbed Adana's arm, pulling her close, and she smelled the horrible stench of palm wine on his breath. Something inside her broke. With a desperate scream, Adana pulled herself free with a strength she didn't know she possessed and ran for the door. "Catch her!" Okoro shouted furiously, but Adana was already through the door, running down the dark corridor, tears blinding her, her heart beating so hard it hurt. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away, to escape this nightmare. She ran through the kitchen, nearly knocking over a pot, and burst out the back door into the dark night. She heard shouts behind her, her mother, Okoro, maybe even her father, but she didn't stop. She ran across the yard, stumbling on unseen stones, towards the only place she had felt safe recently, the outbuilding. Emeka was hidden in the shadows near the house, trying to hear what was happening through the study window, when he saw Adana run out the back door as if fleeing the devil himself. He immediately ran after her. She stumbled into the outbuilding, sobbing, and fell to her knees on the hay. Seconds later, Emeka entered, quietly closing the door behind him. "Adana," he whispered urgently, kneeling beside her. She turned and, without thinking, threw herself into his arms, crying uncontrollably against his chest. Emeka held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, the other holding her trembling back. "You're safe," he murmured softly. "You're safe now. Tell me what happened." Between broken sobs, Adana told him everything. The debt, the horrible man, the forced marriage, the humiliation she had almost suffered. Emeka felt his rage grow with every word, a cold, controlled fury that burned in his veins. How dare they? How dare they treat her like merchandise, sell her to that pig to pay their debts? But he kept his voice calm and comforting, because Adana needed comfort now, not more anger. "Listen to me carefully," he said firmly, gently pulling her back so he could look into her red, swollen eyes. "You are not going to marry that man. I will not allow it. Do you understand?" Adana shook her head, confused. "But, Mr. Chinedu, you can't do anything. You are just a laborer, and they have already decided. I have no choice." "You do," Emeka insisted. "You always have a choice, and I will make sure you have one." They heard voices approaching Chinwe, calling for Adana, Okoro, shouting obscenities. Emeka quickly stood up, thinking, he couldn't let them find her here. "Come," he whispered, pulling her by the hand. He led her to the darkest corner of the outbuilding, where the hay piles were highest. "Hide back here. Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. Promise me." Adana nodded, trembling, and squeezed into the tight space between the hay and the wall. Emeka quickly arranged more hay in front, completely concealing her from view. Then he went back to the center of the outbuilding and sat down casually, as if he were just resting. The door of the outbuilding burst open violently, and Chinwe entered with the lamp, followed closely by a stumbling Okoro. "Where is she?" Chinwe demanded, looking around frantically. "I know she came here." Emeka stood up slowly, feigning sleepiness and confusion. "What are you talking about, Ma? I have been here alone since you took Miss Adana away earlier." Okoro advanced menacingly. "Don't lie to us, you vagabond." The girl ran away, and this was the only place she could have come. Emeka maintained his humble posture, but his eyes were hard. "I have not seen anyone, sir. The place is empty." Chinwe was not convinced. She began to rummage through the hay with her hands, searching desperately. Okoro also began to search, more clumsy and aggressive. Emeka watched anxiously, ready to intervene if they got too close to Adana's hiding place. His heart pounded, but he kept his face neutral. Finally, after several minutes of fruitless searching, Chinwe gave up with a frustrated cry. "She must have run into the bush," she decided. "Let's look out there." Okoro spat on the ground in disgust. "That ungrateful girl will pay for this when we find her." He cast a suspicious look at Emeka. "And if I find out you are lying, laborer, you will regret it." They left the outbuilding, leaving the door open. Emeka waited until their voices had faded completely before he rushed to Adana's hiding spot. "They're gone," he whispered, helping her out. "But it's not safe for you to stay here. They will come back to look again." Adana was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "I have nowhere to go. If I run from the property, they will find me in the village. And I cannot put you in this position, mister. Chinedu, you have already risked too much by hiding me." Emeka held her shoulders firmly. "Adana, listen. I need to tell you something important. Something that will change everything." She looked at him, confused, waiting. Emeka took a deep breath. It was time to reveal the truth, even if prematurely. There was no other choice. "My name is not Chinedu," he began slowly. "I am Emeka Ofordili, chief of Amankwe." Adana blinked, processing the words, then shook her head, a small, sad smile appearing on her lips. "Mr. Chinedu, I know you are trying to help me, but you don't have to make up stories." "It's not a story," Emeka interrupted gently. "It's the truth. I came to this property in disguise days before my official visit, because I wanted to see the real faces of the families, not the masks they wear to impress nobles." He pulled a heavy gold ring from an inner pocket of his shirt. It bore the Ofordili family crest, a rampant lion under a crown. It was his chieftaincy ring, which he always wore, except when in disguise. "See, this is my family's seal. Only the true chief possesses it." Adana took the ring with trembling hands, turning it over in the faint light coming through the window. It was clearly genuine, the gold pure and heavy, the crest elaborately engraved. She looked up at him, still processing. So everything I saw and heard these past few days, you were testing my family?" Her voice was small, hurt. "Were you amusing yourself, watching how we behaved?" "No," Emeka said quickly, stepping closer to her. "It was never for amusement, Adana. I came looking for authenticity, for truth, and I found you." He took her hands in his, the ring still clasped between their palms. "I found a genuine, kind, strong woman who, even when treated unjustly, did not become bitter. I found someone who shows true kindness, not because she wants to impress or gain something, but because she has a pure heart." His dark brown eyes shone with sincerity. "I came looking to see if true love still existed, if someone could see me as a man and not as a title or a fortune. And you saw me, Adana. You saw Chinedu, the poor laborer, and you were kind. You were real." Tears streamed down Adana's face again, but this time they were not of fear or despair. They were of confusion, relief, and something more she couldn't name. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I will not let you marry that man," Emeka declared firmly. "And because I want to make you a proposal. A real proposal of marriage." Adana's eyes widened, her breath catching. "What?" Emeka knelt before her, still holding her hands. "I know this is sudden. I know we've only known each other for a few days. But in these days, I have seen more truth and goodness in you than in years of knowing other people. I am not asking you to love me now, only that you give me a chance. Marry me, Adana. Let me take you away from this place, protect you, give you the life you deserve. And in time, who knows, maybe we can build something real together." Adana was paralyzed, her heart beating so hard she thought he could hear it. But I am a bastard. I have no dowry. I am not suitable for a chief. You could have any woman in the region, someone beautiful, educated, from an important family. I don't want any woman. Emeka interrupted softly. I want you, if you accept. Of course, I would never force you into anything, Adanna. This choice is yours, and yours alone. She looked at him, really looked. For the first time, seeing not Chinedu the humble worker, but Emeka the chief, and the most surprising thing was that she saw the same man in both, the same kind heart, the same honest eyes, the same good soul. I need time to think, she began hesitantly. But then they heard angry voices approaching again. Chinwe was coming back, and this time there were more people with her, probably farmhands summoned for the search. Emeka stood up quickly. We don't have time. They won't stop looking. If we stay here, they will find you and force you into this marriage with Okoro. He looked deeply into her eyes. Do you trust me? Adanna thought of everything he had done in the past few days. The kindness, the respect, the care for the horses, the way he truly listened to her. She thought of the alternative, Okoro, a life of horror and abuse. And surprisingly, she found the decision was not as difficult as it should have been. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Emeka smiled, a genuine handsome smile that transformed his face. Then let's go. Now, he took her hand and led her quickly out the back of the outbuilding, where they wouldn't be seen. They ran silently through the darkness, skirting the property until they reached the dirt road that led away from the Okafor farm. The full moon lit their path like a celestial lantern. Where are we going? Adanna asked, breathless, as they ran. To my estate. It's a 2-hour ride on horseback, but on foot, it will take until dawn. Can you walk for that long? Adanna nodded, determined. She would do anything not to go back to that house, not to marry Okoro. They walked quickly down the dark road, Emeka constantly looking back to see if they were being followed. The silence of the night was broken only by the sound of their footsteps on the dirt and the crickets chirping in the surrounding bush. After about an hour, they stopped near a small stream to rest and drink water. Adanna sat on a rock, massaging her sore feet. She had run out wearing only old sandals, which were not suitable for a long walk. Emeka noticed and frowned with concern. Your feet are hurt, he observed, kneeling before her. You shouldn't have to walk so far. I'm fine, Adanna insisted, though her voice betrayed her fatigue. I've walked longer distances doing chores on the farm. Emeka shook his head. Climb on my back. I'll carry you the rest of the way. Adanna's eyes widened. You can't do that. It's too far. I'll be too heavy. Adanna, he said firmly but gently, let me take care of you. It's what I will do for the rest of our lives, if you'll let me. Let it start now. She hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. She timidly climbed onto his back, and Emeka lifted her easily, adjusting her weight comfortably. He was truly strong, Adanna realized, his muscles not even trembling under her weight. They started walking again, now at a slower, steadier pace. Adanna rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. It was strange to be so close to a man, but it didn't feel threatening or wrong. It felt safe. For the first time in a very long time, Adanna felt truly safe. Can I ask you a question? Adanna murmured, after they had walked in silence for a while. Of course, Emeka replied, his steps never faltering. You mentioned you were looking to see if true love still existed. Why? What happened? Emeka was silent for so long that Adanna thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, his voice came out low and heavy with old emotion. I was married to a woman named Adaora. She was my everything. He paused, swallowing hard. 3 years ago, she became pregnant. We were so happy, so hopeful, but the delivery was difficult. Very difficult. I lost them both, Adaora and our son, on the same night. Adanna felt tears spring to her eyes, hearing the raw pain in his voice. I'm so sorry, she whispered, gently squeezing his shoulders. So very sorry. After that, I closed my heart. Emeka continued. I buried myself in work, in the responsibilities of my title. My family wanted me to remarry, to continue the lineage, but every woman I met only saw the title, the fortune. No one saw the man. He stopped walking and gently set Adanna back on the ground so they could face each other. Until you saw me as Chinedu, a poor laborer with nothing, and yet you were kind. You were real with me. That meant more than you will ever know. Adanna hesitantly raised her hand and gently touched his face. I am not Adaora. I can never be. But I promise I will always be true to you. I will always be myself, with no masks, no pretense. Emeka held her hand against his face, closing his eyes. I don't want you to be Adaora. I want you to be Adana. Only Adana. They stood like that for a long moment, two wounded hearts finding comfort in each other under the moonlight. Then Emeka opened his eyes and smiled. Come on, we're almost there. He took her hand, and they continued walking, this time side by side, their fingers intertwined. The horizon was beginning to lighten with the first rays of dawn when they finally spotted the imposing gates of Chief Emeka's estate. They were huge wrought iron gates with the Ofordili family crest shining golden at the top. A gateman just starting his shift saw two figures approaching, a tattered man and a woman in a worn gray dress, and he frowned in confusion. But as Emeka got closer, the gateman's eyes widened in recognition and shock. Chief Emeka. My goodness, sir, where have you been? We were worried. Emeka waved, dismissing the concerns. I will explain everything later, Joseph. Please, open the gates and call my brother Ikenna. Tell him it's urgent. Joseph hurried to obey, swinging the wide gates open. Adana stared inside, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and intimidation. The property stretched for miles, with perfectly manicured lawns, marble fountains, and at its center, a magnificent three-story mansion with white columns, gleaming golden in the rising sun. It was like a palace from a dream. This is all yours? She whispered, suddenly very aware of her torn, dirty dress and her bare feet. Emeka noticed her hesitation and squeezed her hand encouragingly. It's ours. If you accept my proposal, all of this will be yours too. But more importantly, it will be your house, your home, a place where you will never be mistreated or disrespected. He guided her gently up the stone path to the main entrance of the mansion. Staff were beginning to appear, preparing the house for the day, and they all stopped in shock to see the chief returning in ragged clothes, accompanied by an unknown young woman. But Emeka ignored the curious stares, focused only on getting Adana inside. The main entrance was breathtaking. Polished marble floors, a crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling, a curved double staircase leading to the second floor. Works of art adorned the walls, and the furniture was fine and elegant. Adana had never seen such wealth and luxury in her life. She suddenly felt very small and out of place in this grand environment. Emeka, a male voice echoed from the top of the stairs. A young man, probably around 30, was running down the steps. He was clearly Emeka's brother. He had the same dark brown eyes, the same strong facial structure, but he was slightly taller and leaner. Ikenna, Emeka greeted with a tired smile. Ikenna stopped in front of them, looking from Emeka to Adana in clear confusion. Where on earth have you been? I sent that message canceling your visit to the Okafors as you asked, but I expected you back the next night. It's been 3 days. Change of plans, Emeka said simply. Then, with a formal gesture, he introduced them. Ikenna, this is Adana Okafor. Adana, my brother Ikenna, my advisor and best friend. Ikenna blinked, processing the surname. Okafor, from the family you were supposed to visit. He looked at her more closely, noticing the torn dress, the bare, dirty feet, the obvious signs of a difficult night. Emeka, what happened? Emeka sighed heavily. It's a long story, but in short, the Okafors are even worse than we imagined. They treat Adana like a slave. They were planning to force her to marry a horrible man to pay off debts. His jaw tightened with anger at the memory. I got her out of there. And now, he looked at Adana with tenderness. Now, if she will have me, she is going to become my wife and the Lolo of Amankwe. Ikenna stood absolutely still, his mouth open in shock. Are you serious? Completely serious, Emeka confirmed. He looked at Adana, who was clearly overwhelmed by everything. The journey, the luxurious surroundings, the revelations, the proposal. But first, Adana needs to rest, take a bath, eat properly, and have time to really think about this without pressure. He turned to Ikenna. Can you call Mama Bisi and ask her to prepare the main guest room for Miss Adana, and ask the maids to provide clean clothes and everything she needs? Ikenna still looked stunned, but he nodded. Of course. I'll see to it now. He hurried off, still shaking his head in disbelief. Emeka turned to Adana with a gentle smile. I know you must be exhausted and confused. I'll have them take good care of you. Rest as much as you need. There's no rush for any decisions. Okay? Adana just nodded, unable to form words. It was all too much luxury, too different, too fast. Moments later, an elderly woman with a kind face and simple but clean clothes appeared. Miss Adana, I am Mama Bisi. the housekeeper of this home. Come with me, my dear. We will take care of you. Mama Bisi extended her hand with genuine kindness, and Adana, grateful for a maternal female presence, accepted it. Mama Bisi led her up the magnificent staircase to the second floor, down a wide corridor with more art on the walls, to a set of carved double doors. She opened them, revealing a room that took Adana's breath away. It was huge, larger than the entire sleeping area she had at the Okafor farm. A four-poster bed covered in white silk sheets dominated the center. There was a large dark wood wardrobe, a dressing table with a mirror, comfortable armchairs near a window that overlooked beautiful gardens, and a side door that led to a private bathroom with a white porcelain bathtub. "Oh my goodness," Adana whispered, turning slowly to take it all in. Mama Bisi smiled understandingly. "I know it's a lot to take in, dear, but for now, let's focus on the basics. First a hot bath, then food, then rest. The rest can wait." With gentle efficiency, Mama Bisi prepared the bath, filling the tub with scented hot water and adding salts and aromatic oils. She helped Adana out of her filthy gray dress and into the water. Adana sighed with pure pleasure as she felt the warmth envelop her tired, aching body. She had never had a hot bath like this. At the Okafor farm, there was only cold water from the stream. Mama Bisi washed her hair with scented shampoo, carefully and patiently detangling the knots while she spoke softly. "Chief Emeka is a good man," Mama Bisi said as she rinsed Adana's hair. "I have known him since he was a boy. He and Ikenna lost their parents young and grew up with many responsibilities on their shoulders." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When Lolo Adaora died, I thought I would never see him smile again. He closed himself off completely. But this morning, when he walked through that door with you, I saw something in his eyes I haven't seen in years. Hope." She looked at Adana with wise, kind eyes. "I do not know your story, my dear, but I know how to recognize gentle souls when I see them. And I see one in you. Whatever you have been through, you deserve happiness. And if you choose to accept the chief's proposal, I promise you will never be treated with anything less than respect and care in this house." Tears streamed down Adana's face, mixing with the bathwater. "I don't understand why he would choose me. I am a nobody. I have nothing to offer a chief." Mama Bisi shook her head firmly. "My dear, you have everything to offer. A pure heart, genuine kindness, quiet strength. Those things are worth more than any dowry or title." She helped Adana out of the tub and wrapped her in soft, warm towels. Then she led her back to the room where clean clothes were waiting. A soft cotton nightgown and a light robe. Adana dressed, feeling strange but wonderfully comfortable in the fine clothes. There was a knock on the door, and a young maid entered carrying a large tray. Fresh bread, butter, jam, scrambled eggs, sliced fruit, orange juice, tea. It was a breakfast fit for royalty. "The chief ordered that you receive the best meal," the maid explained with a shy smile. "I hope you like it, miss." She placed the tray on a small table near the window and left discreetly. Adana sat down and looked at the food, her stomach rumbling loudly. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten properly. She started slowly, but was soon eating with appetite, savoring every delicious bite. As she ate, she looked out the window at the gardens below. She saw Emeka walking among the flowers, now dressed in clean, appropriate clothes, dark trousers, a white shirt, a waistcoat. He looked so different, so noble and dignified, yet she still recognized in him the same man who had been kind to her as Chinedu. Mama Bisi watched from a nearby armchair, knitting something while giving Adana space to think. "You can rest as long as you like," she said softly. "No one will rush you or force you into anything. This is your choice, my dear. It will always be." Adana finished eating, and suddenly, the exhaustion of the sleepless night hit her like a wave. Mama Bisi noticed and immediately stood up. "Come, let's get you to bed. You need to sleep." She helped Adana lie down in the soft bed, so different from the thin, hard mattress she had at the Okafor farm. The sheets were like clouds, and the pillow was scented with lavender. Mama Bisi covered her gently and stroked her hair. "Sleep, my dear. When you wake up, the world will seem clearer. It always does." And with that, she left quietly, closing the door. Adana lay there, staring at the ornate ceiling, her mind spinning with everything that had happened in the last few hours. Less than a day ago, she was at the Okafor farm, believing her destiny was to marry that horrible man. Now she was in a magnificent mansion, with a kind chief asking for her hand in marriage, offering her a life she had never dared to dream of. It was like a fairy tale, but fairy tales weren't real, were they? No one rescues Cinderella. No one chooses the rejected bastard. Except Emeka had chosen her, not out of pity, but because he had seen something in her worth valuing. Adana thought of her grandmother, the only person who had truly loved her at the Okafor farm. She remembered her words, "Be kind, my girl. Always be kind, because kindness is never wasted." She had been kind to Chinedu, the laborer, and Chinedu had been Emeka, the chief, and her kindness, her truth, had changed everything. She closed her eyes, feeling tears stream down her face. But this time they were not of sadness or fear. They were of gratitude, of hope, of possibilities she had never imagined. Adana slept for hours, a deep, dreamless sleep that her exhausted body desperately needed. When she finally woke up, the sun was already high in the sky, indicating it was late afternoon. She sat up, confused for a moment, not recognizing where she was. Then it all came back. The escape, the walk, the revelation, the proposal. This magnificent mansion had not been a dream. It was real. She got out of bed and went to the window, looking out at the sprawling gardens, the fountains, the horses grazing in green meadows in the distance. There was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," Adana called, her voice still hoarse from sleep. Mama Bisi entered, carrying a beautiful dress over her arm. It was a soft sea green, with delicate lace at the collar and sleeves. "The chief asked me to bring this for you, my dear," Mama Bisi said with a smile. "It belonged to the late Lolo, but it was never worn. Chief Emeka thought it would be your size." Adana touched the fabric reverently. It was the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. "Can I really wear it?" she asked hesitantly. "Of course you can, and there are more in the wardrobe." The chief had them brought from Lolo Adaora's things. She would have wanted someone to wear them, especially someone he is considering as his future wife. Mama Bisi helped her get dressed. The dress fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then she combed Adana's hair, leaving it loose in soft waves over her shoulders. "You are beautiful," Mama Bisi said with approval. "The chief is waiting for you in the rose garden. Would you like me to take you to him?" Adana nodded, her heart fluttering. Mama Bisi guided her through the mansion and out a side door that led to the gardens. It was even more beautiful up close. Perfectly tended flower beds, bubbling fountains, birds singing in the trees. And in the center of the rose garden, surrounded by flowers in hundreds of shades of red, pink, and white, stood Emeka. He was wearing formal clothes now, an impeccably cut dark suit, but his smile was the same gentle, sincere, warm. He turned at the sound of their footsteps, and his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Adana," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, walking slowly towards him. "Yes, better than I have in years, actually." They stood face to face, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Two strangers who had become something more in a matter of days. "I know all of this is sudden and frightening," Emeka began, "and I don't want you to feel pressured, but I also need to be honest about the situation." His face grew serious. "The Okafors will look for you. When they find out you are with me, they will cause trouble." He paused. "The only way to protect you completely is if we get married. As my wife and the Lolo, they will not be able to touch you. But I understand if you need more time, if you want to get to know me better first. We can wait, and until then, you will be protected here, as my guest." Adana thought carefully. She had known Emeka for only a few days, but in that time, she had seen more of his true character than many people see in years. She had seen his kindness to the horses, his concern for her, his honesty even when it was difficult, his respect for her choices, and most importantly, she had seen that he didn't change depending on his audience. Chinedu the worker and Emeka the chief were the same essential person. Kind, fair, genuine. "Can I ask a question before I answer?" Adana asked softly. "Anything," Emeka replied immediately. "Why me? Truly? It can't just be because I was kind to you as Chinedu. There are many kind women in the region, women more suitable for a chief." Emeka stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Because you were kind even when it didn't benefit you. Because you have the strength to endure injustice without becoming unjust yourself. Because I see in your eyes the same pain I carry, but also the same hope I thought I had lost." His eyes shone with sincere emotion. "Because when I am with you, I can breathe again. Because you make me want to be better, to do better. And because, Adana Okafor, in just a few days, you have made me feel more alive than I have in 3 years." Tears were now flowing freely down Adana's face. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I disappoint you? Or society? Or impossible?" Emeka interrupted firmly. "You are already more than good enough. You are extraordinary, Adana. You just don't see it yet because they have spent your whole life telling you otherwise. but I will spend the rest of my life proving them wrong." He knelt formally before her, taking the chieftaincy ring from his pocket, the same one he had shown her in the outbuilding. "Adana Okafor, will you marry me? Not because you need protection or to escape the Okafors, but because you believe we can build something real together. Because you see in me what I see in you, the possibility of genuine love." Adana looked at him. This good man who had rescued her, who offered not just protection but true respect and affection. She thought of all the alternatives. Going back to the Okafors was impossible. Running away alone would be dangerous and lonely. And staying here merely as a guest would be to live in uncertainty. But more important than all of that, when she looked at Emeka, she felt something she had never felt before. The feeling of being truly seen and valued. It wasn't love yet. It was too soon for that. But it was something real, something that could grow into love over time. "Yes," she said finally, her voice clear and decisive. "I will marry you, Emeka." A huge smile lit up Emeka's face. He slid the chieftaincy ring onto her finger. It was too big, made for a man's hand, but it symbolized his commitment. "We will have a proper ring made for you," he promised, gently kissing her hand. He stood up and, hesitating, asked, "May I hug you?" Adana nodded, and he wrapped her in a gentle, respectful embrace. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the strong beat of his heart, feeling safe for the first time in her life. They stood like that for a long moment, two wounded hearts beginning to heal together. Finally, they separated, and Emeka smiled. "We have much to plan. The ceremony, the clothes, the guests. It can be simple," Adana interrupted quickly. "I don't need anything grand. In fact, I would prefer something small and private." Emeka squeezed her hand affectionately. "As you wish. It can be just us, Ikenna, Mama Bisi, and the priest. The important thing is the commitment, not the spectacle." That evening, they had dinner together, Emeka, Adana, Ikenna, and Mama Bisi, in the mansion's intimate dining room. It wasn't the huge formal hall, but a smaller, cozier space where the family truly gathered. The food was delicious and plentiful, but more important was the conversation. Ikenna, having gotten over his initial shock, proved to be funny and welcoming, telling embarrassing stories from Emeka's childhood that made Adana laugh genuinely for the first time in a long time. Mama Bisi contributed her own tales, and even Emeka relaxed, laughing at himself. Adana watched it all with admiration. This was family, not necessarily by blood, but by choice, by mutual care, by genuine love. It was so different from the constant tension and cruelty at the Okafor house. To new beginnings, Ikenna toasted, raising his glass of wine, and to finding love in the most unlikely of places. They all toasted together, and Adana felt tears of gratitude well up again. The next few days passed in swift but careful preparation. Emeka hired a discreet priest he knew personally and set the ceremony for 3 days' time. Mama Bisi coordinated everything with motherly efficiency. She prepared the wedding dress, another of Adaora's unused gowns, altered to fit Adana perfectly arranged flowers from their own garden, and prepared a modest but elegant feast. Ikenna took care of the legal aspects, ensuring all the documents were in order. Emeka, for his part, spent every free moment with Adana, walking in the gardens, talking for hours, truly getting to know each other. They told their stories, their hopes, their fears. Emeka spoke more about Adaora, not to compare, but so Adana would understand who he had been and who he was becoming. Adana shared her difficult childhood, but also the small moments of beauty she had found. A beautiful sunset, her grandmother's kindness, the peace of the stream. "You find light even in the darkness," Emeka observed with admiration as they walked through the orchard on the eve of the wedding. "That is a rare gift, Adana." She smiled shyly. "I had to find it. Otherwise I would have drowned in bitterness long ago." They stopped under a flowering mango tree, its white blossoms falling gently around them like scented snow. Emeka turned to face her, holding both her hands. "Tomorrow, you will become my wife. I want you to know a few things before then." His face was serious but kind. "I will never force you into anything. Our marriage will be at the pace you set. If you need time before, well, before all aspects of marriage, I will be patient. Your comfort and happiness are my priority." Adana blushed, understanding his meaning. "You are very kind," she murmured. "But I have a question. What do you expect of me as a wife? What will my responsibilities be?" Emeka thought carefully before answering. "I expect you to be yourself, honest, kind, true. As for responsibilities as the Lolo, there will be some social duties, receiving guests occasionally, attending community events, but Mama Bisi will help you learn everything. He paused. But mostly, Adana, I just want you to be happy, to finally have the life you have always deserved. Everything else, we will figure out together along the way. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, the sky a cloudless blue and birds singing cheerfully. Adana woke early, her heart beating fast with nervousness and anticipation. Mama Bisi came in with breakfast and a maternal smile. Big day, my dear, she said brightly. How are you feeling? Scared, Adana admitted honestly, but also hopeful. It's strange to feel both at the same time. Mama Bisi laughed softly. It's perfectly normal. Every great change brings fear and hope together. They spent the morning preparing Adana. The dress was stunning white silk with delicate lace, simple but elegant. Mama Bisi styled her hair in a loose updo, with a few white flowers woven in. When she was done, she led Adana to the large mirror. Adana barely recognized the woman looking back, not because of the clothes or hair, but because of the expression on her face. For the first time, she saw genuine joy in her own eyes, a light that had never been there before. You are beautiful, Mama Bisi said, tears in her eyes. Absolutely beautiful. The ceremony was to be held in the estate's private chapel, a small stone building covered in ivy, with stained glass windows that created patterns of light on the floor. When Adana entered on the arm of Ikenna, who had gently offered to walk her down the aisle, she saw Emeka waiting at the altar. He wore a formal black suit, but his eyes were fixed only on her, shining with emotion. As she reached his side, he whispered, "You look radiant." The priest, a kind, elderly man named Father John, began the ceremony with simple but profound words about commitment, companionship, and true love. Marriage, he said, is not just about two individuals coming together. It is about two souls choosing to walk together through life's joys and hardships, supporting each other, respecting each other, growing together. He looked at Emeka and Adana with affection. I see before me two people whom life has tested harshly, but I also see hope, courage, and a willingness to build something new and good. That is what truly matters. He then proceeded with the vows. Emeka went first, his voice firm and clear. I, Emeka Ofordili, promise to love, honor, and respect you all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner, your protector, your friend. I promise to truly see you, to cherish your kindness, and to work every day to be worthy of the trust you have placed in me. Then it was Adana's turn. Her voice trembled at first but grew stronger. I, Adana Okafor, promise to love, honor, and respect you. I promise to be true, to be patient, to be your support. I promise to build a home and a life with you, based on honesty and kindness. Father John smiled. Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Emeka, you may kiss your wife. Emeka leaned in slowly, giving Adana time to pull away if she wanted, but she didn't. She closed her eyes and met him halfway. It was a soft, chaste, respectful kiss, but it was filled with promise. When they parted, they were both smiling. Ikenna applauded enthusiastically. Mama Bisi was crying with joy, and even Father John had a huge grin on his face. I present to you, the priest said in a cheerful voice, Chief Emeka and Lolo Adana Ofordili. The small group moved to the dining room, where Mama Bisi had prepared a modest but delicious feast. The atmosphere was joyful and relaxed, more like a celebration among friends than a formal ceremony. Ikenna made an emotional toast, to my brother, who has finally found the courage to open his heart again, and to Adana, who has brought light back into this house. May you have many years of happiness together. After lunch, Emeka took Adana for a walk through the estate's extensive gardens. I want to show you my favorite place, he said, leading her down a stone path to a small pavilion surrounded by purple bougainvillea. From the pavilion, there was a breathtaking view of the entire estate. The gardens, the meadows, the mountains in the distance. I used to come here after Adaora died, Emeka confessed softly. It was the only place I could feel peace. He looked at Adana. I want to share this place with you now. I want it to be our place, where we can come when we need quiet, to talk, to just be together. Adana squeezed his hand. Thank you for letting me into your life. For giving me this chance. You are the one giving me a chance, Emeka corrected. A chance to be happy again, to build something new, to live, not just exist. They sat in the pavilion for hours, talking, planning their future, dreaming together. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, they returned to the mansion. Mama Bisi had prepared the master bedroom, the chief's room, for them. But true to his promise, Emeka had had a comfortable divan placed near the fireplace. "You don't have to sleep in the bed with me yet if you don't want to," he said gently. "We can take things slowly." But Adanna, surprising herself, shook her head. "It's all right. I trust you." And she realized completely that she did. The first days of their marriage were a period of adjustment and discovery. Adanna learned her new life as the Lolo, with Mama Bisi's patient help. It wasn't easy. There were so many social rules, so many expectations. But Emeka always reminded her that she didn't have to be perfect, just herself. "The elite needs more genuine people like you," he would say whenever she felt insecure. "Don't change to fit in with them. Let them change by knowing you." One day, a week after the wedding, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Uche Okafor, accompanied by a lawyer. He demanded to speak with the chief about the abduction of his daughter. Emeka received him in the study with Adanna by his side, holding her hand for strength. "There was no abduction," Emeka said coldly. "Adanna came of her own free will, fleeing a forced marriage." Uche turned red with anger. "She is not of age. She cannot make that decision." "I am 19 years old," Adanna said firmly. "I am an adult, and I was running away from you selling me to Chief Okoro as payment for a debt." Uche's lawyer looked uncomfortable, realizing the case was not what his client had presented. Emeka leaned forward. "Mr. Okafor, Adanna is now my legal wife, the Lolo of this region. I suggest you accept that with dignity and leave before I decide to investigate your questionable business practices more deeply." The veiled threat worked. Uche and his lawyer left, grumbling, but they did not return. Chief Okoro, upon learning that Adanna had married a powerful chief, cancelled the Okafor's debt out of fear of reprisal. Months passed. Adanna flourished in her new life. She discovered she had a talent for management and began helping Emeka with the estates. Her natural kindness endeared her to the staff and the local community. The love between her and Emeka grew gradually, naturally, like a well-tended plant. It was not the explosive love of fairy tales, but something deeper and more real, built on mutual respect, trust, companionship, and constant kindness. A year after their wedding, Adanna found out she was pregnant. Emeka cried with joy and fear, remembering Adaora, but Adanna held his face in her hands and said, "I am not Adaora, and this is not that story. This is our story, and it will have a different ending." And it did. Adanna gave birth to a healthy baby girl, whom they named Anna Helena, honoring the past while embracing the future. In the rose garden, where Emeka had proposed to Adanna, she now walked with her daughter in her arms, her husband by her side, and felt a deep gratitude. She had started as the rejected bastard, the invisible one, the mistreated one, but she had chosen kindness, even when she received none. She had chosen truth, even when lies would have been easier. And that choice, that persistent, authentic kindness, had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Emeka asked, putting his arm around her shoulders. Adanna smiled, looking at her daughter and then at him. "I'm thinking that my grandmother was right. Kindness is never wasted. It always comes back to you somehow. Sometimes, in the disguise of a chief." Emeka laughed and kissed her softly. And there, surrounded by blooming roses under the blue Anambra sky, a family that had begun in the most unlikely of places had finally found its place in the world, not through title or fortune, but through true love.